Yeah, this is a really, really interesting game and one that I think might have major implications as the season goes along. I expect both these teams to be in the top five of the Big 12 standings and potentially in that tiebreaker for the Big 12 title game.
We've got the one, the only, the best dressed in the media sports world, CBS Sports' very own Shehan Jeyarajah. Shehan, we appreciate you taking the time today, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to hear your perspective on Arizona State because obviously they've dropped out of the top 25. I think a lot of people, especially from the outside, would consider it like a disappointing first three games. But this last game against Texas State, they showed a lot of flashes of who we expected them to be. What's your overarching take on the Sun Devils post Big 12 championship so far?
Well, I think that there's no question, right? That Mississippi State game was a huge disappointment, I think. Arizona State was one of the teams in the Big 12 that started out highly ranked to start the year. And, you just have to take advantage of those opportunities when you're a Big 12 team, right? Because it's so much harder to play your way back up. Now, what I will say is that I don't think that there's anything structurally flawed with this team, right? I mean, I think that anybody could see like Arizona State was the better team against Mississippi State and blew it in so many moments. And of course, I think probably my big concern is also like Sam Levitt just doesn't look like himself in that game, right? So that's the piece that I want to see improvement from. But from a talent perspective, from an ability perspective, from a coaching perspective, I don't have a lot of questions about this team. They just have to do it more consistently.
You bring up Sam Levitt. Obviously, there's been a lot of chatter here locally about the way that he's played to this point in the season, especially with such high expectations going into the 2025 season. Just a little bit more in depth, what have you seen from ASU's QB1 through the first 3 weeks of the year? And then maybe how has it changed from week one to now where we're at heading into conference play?
Well, I think that when you look at Levin, I mean, he was considered pretty clearly the QB1 in the Big 12 coming into the year. And I think that through the first couple of weeks, he certainly has not played like it. Obviously, the game against Mississippi State was pretty terrible. And by the way, when I predicted Arizona State to beat Mississippi State, it was kind of on the assumption that he's not going to play as poorly against Mississippi State as he did last year whenever that game was close. But, he kind of did replicate that and didn't necessarily handle that moment well. So, from my perspective, look, obviously he has a really talented receiver room. I think he is probably missing the safety valve of Cam Scadaboo, even though Arizona State has run the ball still at a high level. I think that the receiving is actually maybe what he misses a bit more, but he's also just got to be a little bit of a better decision maker in some of these moments. He has that ability to buy time and make plays, but he also, I think, has to really stay in structure a little bit more at times as well. So it's been an up and down first couple of weeks. I think that, one thing that I think gets lost in stuff like this as well is that expectations for him are off the charts right now. And it's a different kind of challenge in college football, having this level of investment, having this level of expectation, being sort of the face of the program in so many ways. And so I don't have a lot of worry that he's going to be able to figure it out. But again, when there are so many good quarterbacks in this Big 12 conference right now, when you take half a step back, it can slip you down the list quite a bit.
You mentioned expectations. It's been a massive theme for this team. Obviously, 365 days ago, they were massively surpassing everybody's preseason expectations. Now, they're not living up to at least what people build them as preseason. Have your personal expectations for this team heading into Big 12 play changed off of the first 3 weeks? Or do you think this is more of a, they're going to get it right, it's just one of those slow starts?
I think that they're going to get it right. I'm not too worried about that. I think, though, that where it gets kind of interesting is, I had them at kind of the number two, number three spot in the Big 12. Maybe it gets nudged down to more like number four, number five. And that was one of my concerns coming into the year is that the reality is in the Big 12 with so many competitive teams, like the gap between number two and number four is almost nothing, right? I mean, obviously fans will remember there were four teams tied for first place in the Big 12 to end the year, and Arizona State and Iowa State get in primarily through tiebreakers. Now, I think they were also the top two teams in the conference, but it's almost a coincidence in some ways. So that's, I think, sort of the question that comes about is, can you replicate the level of success that you had in 2024 if you do get off to a slow start the way that they did last season? So I think that that's probably the one thing that I'd say is that I expected them to look like one of the best teams in the Big 12 to start the year. To this point, I think that they've been one of many teams that are in that contention conversation.
A lot's been made of the pass catchers for Arizona State so far this season, specifically in the wide receiver room. There hasn't been a ton of production from players not named Jordan Tyson, but Tyson, it feels like, is a walking highlight waiting to happen. What have you seen from him? And then maybe her just in terms of his draft stock as one of the best, if not best wide receivers potentially available in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Jeremiah Smith is in a class of his own, but I would put Jordan Tyson up there with basically anybody else. He was one of my preseason first team All-Americans on my ballot, ahead of even guys like Ryan Williams. And I think that he's played like it to this point. I mean, he's just such a dynamic player. It's kind of crazy to think about in hindsight that he wasn't available for the college football playoff and Big 12 title game. They still managed to play that well. And so, I mean, from my perspective, like you said, I think he's going to be one of the first couple receivers drafted. I think that, you know what, if you asked right now, I think that he's a day one or day two pick with the ability to continue to play his way up as well. So, I mean, the thing that you love about him is, like you said, great route runner, great speed. He's a downfield threat. He has sure hands. Like, he's just kind of a starter pack for what you need in a receiver in college football right now. And I think that's going to serve him really well, even when he gets to playing on Sundays.
Obviously, Jordan Tyson has been a name that a lot of people have been talking about all offseason. One that's been a little bit more under the radar, though, has been Raleek Brown, who is back playing college football, and he is absolutely dominating, over 8 yards per carry, just some absolutely electric, massive plays. Has the Raleek Brown experience caught you off guard a little bit, or is this something that you thought, okay, that might be a diamond in the rough for ASU?
Well, I mean, this is the funny thing about it, right? It's like it's kind of was supposed to be a diamond, right? This is a guy who was a 5-star recruit when he came to USC, and I was expecting him to be, I mean, in some ways, what Cam Scadaboo was last year for this team. Obviously dealt with injury, so didn't really get into the lineup. I'm not surprised, frankly, at all by his breakout. I think that he is a perfect fit for this team, a perfect fit for this roster, a perfect fit for this offense. And I think that they needed somebody like him to come along and step up. Now, of course, they've split carries, which I think is even a better situation for both of these running backs as they try to obviously keep them healthy. But the thing that you love about Raleek Brown is that he is truly an all-purpose back. He has the ability to catch out of the backfield. He has the ability to get outside. He's an explosive player. And I think that he's only going to continue to get better as he reintegrates himself to college football.
Obviously, a big matchup this week going into conference play. Maybe not the game of the week in the conference. I think Texas Tech and Utah probably take that cake. But another good one in Waco, ASU taking on the Baylor Bears. Just how do you see that matchup playing out? Maybe some strengths and weaknesses for the Sun Devils heading into Waco.
Yeah, this is a really, really interesting game, and one that I think might have major implications as the season goes along. I expect both these teams to be in the top 5 of the Big 12 standings and potentially in that tiebreaker for the Big 12 title game. You know, when I look at Baylor, this is a team that is as explosive offensively as any team in the country right now. I think that at this moment, Sawyer Robertson has maybe taken over that mantle of QB1 in the Big 12 with the way that he's played early. And I think that they're going to be able to put up points even against a really good Arizona State team. Now, I think that this is the game where you really need Sam Leavitt to step up because Baylor's okay against the run, but they've really struggled to this point against the pass. And I think that also, by the way, when it comes to Leavitt, they haven't been elite against the quarterback run to this point. You watch that week 1 game against Auburn, Jackson Arnold was able to break away and run all over them. So I think this is a huge opportunity for Leavitt to kind of come out of his shell, for some other pass catchers to step up, because this is a banged up Baylor secondary that hasn't been able to shut down some of the better passers in this conference or in their non-conference slate. And I think that Leavitt is clearly the best that they're going to play so far.
Defensively, you mentioned obviously ASU is going to need to step up big time, the best offensive unit that they faced all season. Do you have any names specifically defensively that you feel like have to have a big game on Saturday for ASU to walk out with a W?
Well, I think the safeties more than anything else. I mean, when you look at this group, I mean, we had been hearing before the season that they expected both of their safeties to potentially be NFL draft picks this year. Xavier Alford, such a big time contributor, such an experienced player back there. And when you look at the way that Baylor's taken advantage of teams, like it's been in that middle to deep heart of the field. And so you just need that defense to step up on the back end and take away some of those easy opportunities. I'd also look at linebacker. Like I think that again, Michael Trigg, the Baylor tight end, has been just incredibly physical in the middle of the field. He is, he's listed at tight end, but I mean, that dude loves to catch the football, loves to run with it. I think that Arizona State's linebackers are really going to need to be up for the challenge of dropping back into coverage and separating Michael Trigg from the football.
I do want to get into kind of just how the Big 12 has really transpired through non-con. Before we do that, though, I've got to know, how do you see that matchup going down in Waco? Does ASU get their first conference win of the season, or is it Baylor defending home turf?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth honestly with this game. I think it's going to be an incredibly fun one. I think it probably is going to be a pretty high scoring game. And again, you've got an offense in Baylor that's playing as well as anybody in the country right now. I lean Baylor right now. I think that just the way that they've put up points is going to serve them well. And I just need to see it to this point a little bit from Sam Leavitt. But he is the X factor for this game. If he's able to open up the game, play like what we saw for so much of last season, and you still have that running game component, I mean, Arizona State needs to put up explosive plays against this Baylor defense that's been really inconsistent. But I narrowly have Baylor, but I mean, a lot of it just has to do with that they're the home team, and I think they're going to handle that moment well.
When you look at the rest of the Big 12, Baylor's been an incredible offense, but I think a lot of people expected Baylor to at least be good this year. Who's been the biggest surprise for you so far through non-con play as we enter what should be a very exciting Big 12 season?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you look around right now, like obviously on the bad end of things, Kansas State has been a total disaster. I didn't necessarily know that they were going to, I didn't know that they were going to be one of the best teams in the Big 12, but I certainly didn't expect them to be one of the worst. And they have been to this point, especially, I mean, frankly, they could be 0-4 right now, which is just crazy to think about. I think that Iowa State on the other side of that week 0 game has been really impressive to this point. A little bit of trouble with Arkansas State last week in a tough focus spot, but they go and beat Iowa in a game that I think they were more dominant than the final score. They beat Kansas State in a game where I think they were more dominant than the final score. Rocco Beck to this point has looked like one of the nation's best quarterbacks. I think that if you were doing a power ranking right now of the Big 12 with their resume, I think that you look at Iowa State as being potentially number one on that list. And I think it's not necessarily a huge surprise, but like what I've seen from Utah and their new offense so far has been really impressive to this point. Obviously, the last 2 years, they've been a bottom 5 offense in the power conferences, period, with Cam Rising obviously dealing with some injuries. Well, we'll have to wait and see how they play against good competition. But man, Devin Dampier and that offense have come in and really lit things up to this point. You mentioned, of course, Utah versus Texas Tech this weekend on Big Noon Kickoff. I think that is going to be one of the games of the year in the conference. And the winner of that game, I think, maybe takes over that spot of favorite in the Big 12.
Yeah, I think when we do our weekly power rankings, I think we got Iowa State 1, Utah 2, and then Texas Tech 3. Just there was so much hype for what those Red Raiders did in the offseason, really rebuilding that defense, investing a lot of money in the transfer portal, in NIL. Just has the start to the season been kind of what you expected from Texas Tech to this point?
Yeah, 100%. But, I'll say at the same time, like they haven't played anybody to this point. But this is what you're supposed to do against nobodies, right? You're supposed to put them into the ground at the end of the first quarter. And they've been leading every game after one quarter, like 28-0. I think that Baron Morton has looked really comfortable in this new offense under Mac Leftwich, their new offensive coordinator. And the defense has just shut teams down to this point. And, just referring back to that Tech versus Utah game, that matchup of the Tech pass rush versus Utah's offensive line is going to be one of the best matches that we see in the Big 12 period this year. So they've done everything that they've needed to do to this point. They've been tremendously dominant. And, people ask me all offseason, like, what exactly is the expectation for this team? And my thing was, because last year, 6 of their 8 wins came by 1 score. And their goal this year, more than anything else, was we don't want to be in 6 1-score games against this year. We want to be able to really focus in on the big games that matter. And if we can handle those and put all the others to the side, that's going to give us a chance to be there in December.
Listen, you clearly know your stuff. If anybody didn't know before this, they know now. But I want to maybe take you a little bit out of your comfort zone. Can I get a hot take? Do you got something that you're maybe like, ooh, I don't know if everybody's going to agree with what I'm saying here?
Well, okay, I do have one bold prediction that I dropped before the year in our SEC preview, actually. And it was that I thought that in this year where people were projecting all these quarterbacks to be great in the SEC, we were actually going to have a really disappointing SEC quarterback year. And to this point, I think that's been the case. Obviously, Arch has been really brutal. Garrett Nussmeier's a player I'm still really high on, but, he hasn't been necessarily the most consistent. DJ Lagway, like you're talking about a guy who, obviously was a big time playmaker, but wasn't necessarily a consistent quarterback during his year. And I actually think that I've nailed it straight on the head. I actually named Talon Green at Arkansas as a potential all conference quarterback, as somebody who maybe would not get in the mix. But, I think that moving over to the Big 12, it's just wide open right now, right? Like, that's the biggest thing that you have to say about it. You could tell me in a month that we're looking at, Kansas and TCU being the 2 best teams in the league, and I wouldn't be that surprised by it. I think that there have been 8 to 9 teams to this point that have really looked the part, and I think it's going to make for a crazy ending to the season.
Oh, man, I love it. It's going to be a fun rest of the season here in the Big 12. CBS Sports' very own Shehan Jeyarajah. Shehan, we appreciate you taking the time today, man.
Thank you so much for having me.